If you go to Wikipedia and search for Professor Jerry Porras, you will find a very impressive description of his qualifications. He is described as an organizational theorist, Lane Professor Emeritus of Organizational Behavior and Change at the Stanford University Graduate School of Business.
My view when I started out as a doctoral student thinking about what it is that I wanted to focus on was that I could see that the society had a lot of inequities in it. Our society, the United States, has a lot of inequities in it and a lot of issues that have to be resolved. And there are a lot of mechanisms for resolving those issues, a lot of ways to go about doing that. But my view was that the most powerful force for really improving this country and the life of this country is organization.
Professor Porras is also co-author of a couple of best-selling books about how to succeed in business and the best habits corporations should implement in order to achieve their goals. Let's talk to Professor Porras and learn from his vast knowledge about business, success, and change in society here in ComoLoHizo.
Éxito.
Success.
Hábitos.
Habits.
¿Cómo lo hizo?
How do they make it?
Descubra las costumbres y secretos de los triunfadores.
Discover the habits and the secrets of those who have succeeded.
Professor Jerry Porras, thank you so much for being with us in ComoLoHizo.
I'm happy to join you.
I try to read as much as I can, and your name and your picture always pop up in the internet and all that, and then talking to you to me is like, some like a achievement, like a dream came true, and so I can talk to a person of your level. So thank you for sharing your time with our audience as well. So when I was reading about you, I went to Wikipedia, and you are described as an organizational theorist, Lane Professor Emeritus of Organizational Behavior and Change at the Stanford University Graduate School of Business. That's a big title to have. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's always a challenge to live up to it. It is a substantial title, but it describes the areas that I've been interested in my whole career, and that's behavior, organizational behavior, and specifically change.
Could you explain us what actually is that all about?
Well, my view when I started out as a doctoral student thinking about what it is that I wanted to focus on was that I could see that the society had a lot of inequities in it. Our society, the United States, has a lot of inequities in it and a lot of issues that have to be resolved. And there are a lot of mechanisms for resolving those issues, a lot of ways to go about doing that. But my view was that the most powerful force for really improving this country and the life of this country is organizations. Organizations of all types, business organizations, governmental, nonprofit, educational, medical, so on. So for me, then, the idea began to grow in me that if I wanted to change and improve the society, that the best way for me to try to contribute to that would be to try to help organizations become much more effective in creating the type of life and the type of reality in this country that everyone can benefit from.
Go ahead, please.
Well, so that became kind of the focus of my work is how can we change organizations to not only make them more effective in doing what they're trying to do, but also to make them places where people that are working there could develop and grow in their abilities and live lives that would really be beneficial to them and their families. So it's kind of a dual purpose that you want to make an organization more successful as an economic entity in terms of business organizations, but you also want to make the organization function in such a way that the people in it can really grow and develop their abilities.
That's so important. Before I would like to rewind a little bit and ask you, so you are not a conformist because you were aspiring to make change in society. How come?
Yeah, well, I think, growing up as a Mexican American, Chicano, Latino, we use different names to describe ourselves over the years, from El Paso, Texas. I quickly saw that life for Mexican Americans was not the same life as it was for the Anglos in the crowd, and that there were many things that got in the way of allowing us to develop ourselves in the ways that we were capable of developing. So from the very early period of my childhood, I saw that there were these discrepancies and that these opportunities that were available to a lot of the white people were not available to the brown people. And so there was an inspiration from the very beginning to try to do something about it. And I chose to do something about it from really the inside, if you will, rather than from the outside. So my life was not focused or dedicated to being at the barricades and trying to press for change that way, but really to learn about how the society and how organizations functioned and to try to change it from the inside. Now, I didn't have that insight when I was young because I was a kid just wanting to get a career that would get me and my family out of the poorer economic class into more of the middle class. And my mother and father really inspired everyone in my family, and I have 3 siblings, a brother and 2 sisters, inspired us. We had to go to college. And so we were living in El Paso, and we couldn't afford to go away, so we went to the university that was right there. At that time, it was called Texas Western College. Today, it's the University of Texas at El Paso. And I majored in engineering because I was going to college in the late 50s, and engineering was really the way to get you into the middle class because the engineers were in high demand, and you could earn a decent salary at it. And so that was my focus, is to major in engineering. But as I evolved later on, and it certainly was years later, I became very interested in applying my professional work to this personal view that I had about trying to improve the society. And that's what led me to become a professor and a researcher rather than continue to be an engineer. So I switched careers.
That's interesting. But you went from El Paso, from a small university, to Stanford University, which is one of the highest ranked universities in the world. How did you achieve that?
Well, it was certainly a long and circuitous road. When I graduated from college, I went into the Army because at that time, this was in 1960, it was right before the Vietnam War began, but the draft was still in operation. And so I didn't want to go into the military as a private, so I had taken ROTC in college. So when I graduated from college, I had a commitment to go into the Army, which I did for 3 years. And after I got out of the Army, I worked as an engineer for a couple of years. I got married at the same time, and my wife and I were living in Phoenix. I was working for General Electric, and I decided that I needed to get an MBA because I could see that in terms of a successful and influential career in a business organization, I needed to know a lot more about how businesses operated. As an engineer, I knew nothing really about that. I knew nothing about accounting or marketing and so on. So what I did is started going to night school at Arizona State. I did that for a year and a half and realized that was not getting me what I wanted to get in terms of learning and understanding new things. So decided to quit work and go to school full time. And through a very kind of circuitous process, I wound up at Cornell University, which I had never even dreamed of attending.
Of course.
I was going to go to Arizona State, but wound up going to Cornell. And at Cornell, my eyes were really opened in the courses that I took in organizational behavior. And that's where the transition from being an engineer to being a social scientist began to take place. So while I was there, I took a lot of courses in organizational behavior and decided that rather than going back into an organization, into a company, I would rather become an academic and get a PhD. So I wound up at UCLA, which at that time had a very, very strong focus on organizational change and development. And this is exactly what I was wanting to get into, as I said earlier. So I went to UCLA and was there for a couple of years, did my dissertation research in Argentina for a year, then came back and worked on my dissertation. And out of that came the opportunity to come to Stanford. And so I did in 1972. And fortunately, I got tenure and was able to make a career of being a professor at the Stanford Business School.
That's amazing. But, I can see that the roots of that progress was in your wish to actually be influential in the evolution of society. You were not the regular guy that decided, okay, I'm on age, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to get my paycheck, and, I'm going to probably watch the games during the weekend. No, you were a conscious social individual that wanted to improve things. And, that's the way probably that many entrepreneurs see life, not only as a change for themselves, but also how to influence, the community or whatever surrounding or whatever goals they have in their own business, and to make it better. Of course, make money, but also to do something good for others. And that's what is important. That's why I was asking you, because anytime that we as Latinos, immigrants, achieve something like you, Professor, is something that we need to understand how, ComoLoHizo, so we can also apply that to our own lives, or probably, tell our kids, hey, listen to Professor Jerry Porras' story. That's what I want for you. You can be really a factor of change in life and improving life for others. And that's what I was talking about. So even you have a book called Success Built to Last, Creating a Life That Matters. I mean, you are a very prolific writer, creator, professor. How can we apply all what you know to a Latino entrepreneur? What would be your best advice to a Latino entrepreneur at this point?
Well, I think my advice would be divided into two categories. One is sort of derived from experiences that I had in my own life. And the second is derived from things that I've learned as an academic and studying organizations. In the first category, I think one of the most significant things as I reflect back on my whole evolution is the idea of taking risks. I told you that I wound up going to Cornell while I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. I had intended to go to Arizona State and get an MBA there. And in fact, I can back up a little bit. I'd been going to Arizona State for night school, and I decided, well, I need to go full time. So I said, well, where do I want to go? So I said, well, I set my sights high. I said, either want to go to Stanford or I want to go to Harvard. Or as a backup, I want to go to Arizona State. So I applied to Stanford and Harvard and Arizona State, and I got rejected at Stanford. I got rejected at Harvard, and I was admitted at Arizona State. So needless to say, that was kind of a blow that I couldn't go to where I had aspired to. But I decided to go to Arizona State. And in doing that, we were living in Phoenix, and Arizona State is in a little town called Tempe, which is one of the suburbs of Phoenix. So we decided that we were going to go there, and I went and found an apartment there, and I had a nice car. I sold the car and got a Volkswagen Beetle, and we made all our preparations. I went to the school, and I arranged for financial aid, and we were all set to go to Arizona State. In June of that year, my son was born. And we were going to go to school the following September. So my son was born in June, and in late June, I got a call from an old friend of my family who used to be a military officer in the Air Force. And he said to me, I understand you're wanting to get an MBA. I said, yes. He said, have you ever thought of Cornell? And I had